So hello, welcome to Fix It Cafe, how to make your own Oogoo based on Surago. Surago is a brilliant sort of mouldable plastic silicon-based product that you can use to strengthen cables, to fix your kettle. It's brilliant. It's a really useful bit of tool to have in your Fix It box, but also it can be quite expensive if you need to use a lot of it. But also it goes off in the packet. So we opened this one today, and you can see here that it's set already in the packet. So and at the moment we were struggling to get hold of it for our Fix It session, partly because we're in lockdown. So we wanted to show you a way that you could make some Surago for yourself. So you'll need three things principally, or three ingredients to make your Surago. The first is corn flour or cornstarch if you're across the Atlantic. The second is silicon sealant, which you use for for sealing around your bath and things like that. And normally it has one of these tubes. On the end of it, and you would use it for kind of like stopping the water from getting down the back of your tiling and stuff like that. So you might have some of that left in your house, but it does also cure or set. So you might need to buy fresh. It's not very expensive, but you do need to then make sure that you're storing it in where you're not letting air get into it, so it stores for longer. Okay, so you want to think about that. But if you've got some left over from a job you've done, this is perfect. The third thing you need is some oil-based oil paint. So you can get non-oil-based stuff now, but this is linseed sunflower oil-based oil paint. But the reason we use that is because it's got very high pigment content, and that means you need a very small amount of this to colour your Surago. So you can use any colour you like. And then equipment-wise to make it, you need something to mix it with. Now you could use like lollipop sticks, or kind of if you've got a tool, if you've got a craft kit, you might have things in there that you don't mind using that aren't in your kitchen cupboard. So we've got our good old trusty Sheffield steel knife that we keep in our Fix It kit because it's a very useful all-round tool. And then I've got a spoon that I'm using for measuring out, that's in here, that I'm just using for this. So it's a spoon that I'm just using for this process. And then we're going to mix it up together. So we're going to mix this up. We're going to mix it up 1 to 1. The recipe says 1 to 1 if you want it to cure is the term, or set is another way of putting it, I guess, but it's rubbery, so it's not quite set. So I'm going to put, just going to make a small amount, so I'm just going to put a couple of teaspoons worth of corn flour there. You can see I'm not being exactly, not measuring this exactly. And that's partly because what I discovered earlier was I needed more corn flour. So although it says 1 to 1, it doesn't say whether that's weight or volume. And I'm just going to squeeze out a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half of the silicon there as well. And give it a little bit more. Okay, so we do that. I use my knife just to get it in, and you might find better ways to mix this together. It's a little bit like making icing sugar or butter icing. It sort of like starts off like sticky butter icing and then turns into royal icing, and royal icing is probably like the stuff you get on a Christmas cake, is probably the best description of what it's like at the end. And then you can see a little bit like that's probably even a bit too much of the oil-based paint there, so that's going to go in. So that's all my ingredients. Put that out of the way, and then just like a little bit of time mixing it in. I just keep the spoon in play because, and I'm just sort of folding it in. And what's really, really important is that you do this in a well-ventilated space. So there's a strong smell of acetic acid when you're doing this. So you must, like, we're in a ventilated room here, there's airflow going through it all the time. But you can smell it, and it does catch the back of your throat if you're not careful. So you can do it next to the window open. If it's not windy with all this cornflour, you could probably do it outside. I wonder if some of that. So you can see it takes a little bit of time. Put some music on, and or listen to the radio. Good podcast time this. If you're I think some of that. So you can just see. I think some of that silicone might have already set. Don't be tempted, like I was, to get your hands in there straight away, because it sticks. It will come off the gloves, but it's quite sticky when it goes onto your gloves, so it does stick to it. So you really want to have a bit of patience. And you can see that colour coming through now in the mix. And it looks pretty inert on the camera, but there's quite a strong smell of acetic acid, which is like a kind of best way I can. If you're a photographer, it's the same stuff they use in stop bath, and it's like a can of vinegar, isn't it? It's basically a very concentrated form of vinegar, or sort of like a chemically made vinegar as opposed to your cider apple vinegar, whatever it is that you use on your chips. But you can see that's coming together now. It's making quite a good sort of paste, and you can see that's a little bit like quite stiff butter icing now. So if you think about it in that sort of way, you need to then start mixing in more corn flour. I found when I did my first mix, I actually mixed in what felt like exactly the same amounts, and I needed to add a lot more corn flour than I thought to kind of get it to go smooth and to get it to a point where you could roll it around. So just really take your time getting it all mixed in. And remember, corn flour is so cheap, you can just add it in. You can add some more into the mix. And just kind of keep having faith. We might be speeding this bit up now, I imagine. So it's getting to a point now where it's lost a bit of its gloss, which I think is a good. You can see that actually it's a bit more. And I'm just going to keep mixing in the corn flour. So there's like, so I'm losing off the plate. But even then, I think it could probably do with a bit more corn flour. So I'm just going to drop a bit more corn flour onto the plate. I might not mix all of this in. I'm just going to keep going. And you can see it wasn't very much silicone, so you can see now this is really becoming quite malleable. So we've got a lovely texture, and then just a little bit of balance. It's gone from being like a sort of butter icing paste to this sort of royal icing. I can start to roll that into a shape now, with a little bit left on the dish there. And we just, it's worth saying that if you didn't want to get this massive tube of silicone just to make some up, you can buy like fish tank sealant, I think, and things like that. So you can have a little look around. You can buy smaller tubes of the silicone, and that will be, and that would mean you wouldn't have to waste a whole tube. But it absolutely, it's a great way to use, and again, it's a great way to kind of use up a tube. A couple of things. Unlike Surago, this hasn't been factory tested, so we haven't. I don't know whether if you left your cable with this wrapped in your pocket, whether you're going to end up with a blue dye transfer onto your white jeans and stuff like that. So it's worth saying at this point. And so you could just make it without the colouring as well, but it is quite good fun to see the colours. So a couple of things that we've used. So this is about ready to use, and it will set and cure quite quickly. And it's getting a bit sticky, so I might just add a bit more flour to the outside. The less flour you add to it, the longer it will take to cure and set. So if you need it to go a little bit longer and not have it set within the time that you're using it, then you want to use less flour, but it does make it quite tricky to handle. If you're using a mould, then I guess you could do that. So you could create a mould and using a PVC based plastic of some sort, I guess like Tupperware. So the Tupperware won't bond to that, so you can set it in there. Okay, so let's use it. So corn flour, yeah, so I should say that the corn flour acts as a catalyst for the curing of the silicon. So when you add silicon, it takes a good few hours to cure, but the corn flour makes that into a catalyst, but it also creates a sort of ready and a mouldable state. So that's nearly ready to, that's curing as we speak. We used it, so I'm going to move this out of the way. Oh, fab. So I'm going to move the messier things out of the way. Rub the corn flour in. So I have a Mac charger here. Now, notoriously, Mac chargers, I've suffered from this myself. Well, their stress point is around here. You know, they get damaged, the wires go, and then a £60 transformer is gone because of this area here. So what we're going to do is take a bit of our newly made Surago or Oogoo, and we're just going to push that in and around the edge of the transformer and just stretch it out along this cable just to give it. And the great thing about Surago and this Oogoo and silicon, I guess, is that when it dries, it's super flexible. So you can retain the flexibility within the cable and that you need to have around your transformer here, but it also will protect that end of the cable there. So that's what we're doing here. Now, I've made a mistake before and there's a lovely reformable plastic called Foamer, which I've used on a power cable before, and that F-O-M-A, is it? Anyway, F-O-R-M. Any form, sorry. And I'll put the word up, on the screen. And it's great, but don't use it on a transformer because it heats up. And when Former heats up, it melts. And then if you happen to leave your transformer on your sofa, it melts into the fabric. So don't do that. But this stuff, so what I'm going to do now is just leave that. So I'm just forming that across there. And that's kind of just protecting the end of that cable there. Okay. And the other thing, so that's one. We've still got some left. So we've got another one I did earlier, Blue Peter style. So put a handle on here. So one thing that would be really interesting to try if you have mobility issues or you've got a broken handle and you want to just adapt some kit or make them a bit easier to use, then you can use this to kind of give yourself another handle or give yourself more grip. So you can create a personalised grip. You could add a ball onto the end of a screwdriver. So you can make that up and put that on there and create something that just gives you a bit more grip. Or if you've lost the grip on a screwdriver and you just need something to help you hold that, then you could, because it's so cheap, you could try out adding that on to your tools. And then here they are. Finally, I'm just going to add some to this headphone cable. I don't know if you can see. It's actually working really well. this, but it's come away at the bottom, and at some point I'm going to have to take that jack plug off and replace it with a new one. But the cabling in headphones is it's great because it's made really fine copper, which stops them going, it stops them breaking inside the cable, but it actually means they're a little bit fiddly to solder back together. So what there's another point in the cable where the rubbers kind of got away from it, so it's exposing the copper underneath. So what I want to do is I'm just going to use a little bit of Surago around both of those ends, and that's the nice thing about not using electrical cable on is if it does get warm in my pocket, I'm not going to end up with a sticky cable. It's not going to stick to my hands, my pockets. I'm just going to wrap some of the Surago around. The cable like that. Also, then it looks blue, which I really quite like. So I'm going to put that on there, and then I'm going to put some around the jack there as well, just to protect it. Just wrap it a bit like so. And then hopefully that will extend. It's a little bit like stitch and time stuff, isn't it? Like darning and socks and jumpers and things like that. So it's just kind of like catching those things as they go with the wear and tear, and allowing a good bit of kit, a nice pair of headphones to last a bit longer, and saving you on a slightly more expensive or tricky repair, or time saving really, because sometimes, you know, if your soldering isn't, like my soldering isn't brilliant, so I might choose to put a whole new cable in there, but you can actually replace that if and when it does go eventually. So absolutely fixable headphones, cables and things like that. So there we go. So there is your Oogoo. I should put that there.
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your time.